Well, welcome everyone to the Masterclass this evening. It's great to have you here, and thank you so much for turning up on time for the session. I'm really excited to share this information with you today, along with my co-host Sadaf Merchant from Energia SOI. You'll learn a little bit more about both of us in a moment. We're here to really share with you how you can empower your staff to support children with additional needs and really understand how we can actually support you with the different offerings that we have for you this evening. So just a few housekeeping items. We are going to try and stick to the time of 60 minutes for the masterclass. If we go a little bit over, that's okay. We're actually recording the masterclass and we will offer the replay for at least a week after this session today. And we'd really like you to ask any questions that you have and pop them in the chat box during the session, because sometimes you might think of a question and then it might just go out of your mind by the end of the session. So please, as you think of them, pop them in the chat box, which is to the right of your screen. And if you're on a mobile, it's usually at the bottom of the screen. There's a little icon there for the chat box. So please feel free to do that throughout the session. We will be sharing a lot of information, so I really encourage you to take notes and try and make the most of the information that we're sharing, because yes, we'll have slides, but we'll also be talking off the slides as well. So please feel free to take notes. And yeah, it's really exciting to have you here. So we're really here to support your school leaders, to support you as school leaders, to transform your school culture by developing the capacity of your staff to improve their personal internal navigation systems and the skills that they need to enable engagement with parents to support students. So what we're talking about here is how we can build the capacity of your staff to be able to manage the different challenges that do arise when they're working with children with additional needs. And in doing that, understanding their own personal internal processes and how they actually manage themselves in relation to being able to support students as well. And that also involves how to engage parents as partners in learning. So before I introduce myself, I'd like you to hear from my co-host for tonight, Sadaf Merchant, who is from Energia SOI. She's a very experienced educator and psychologist, and she has a wealth of information to share. So I'll just pass over to Sadaf to introduce herself, and then I'll share a little bit more about me.
A very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for connecting with us today. My name is Sadaf, and I'm a clinical psychologist and Chief Learning Officer at Energia SOI. My expertise relies completely in need-based interventions for children, young adults, and for all the working population. And that's the reason when we say that what is the impact on your staff, this was one of the reasons we wanted to cover up that topic, because how we can support and integrate within your schools, within your system, so that we can not only just support the staff, but also leverage the learning needs and strengths of the students in different ways. With this, I give over to Rachel to continue with the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sadaf. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Stewart, and you may have seen me online on social media and different posts that I share, because I'm often running webinars and masterclasses and different sessions for school leaders, teachers and parents. And I guess my main background is in parent engagement, and I began working in my business Practically Learning about 15 years ago, where I started consulting in schools with school leaders around how to engage more effectively with parents. And through that time and over the past 15 years, I've discovered that there are specific areas that we can support parents in understanding their roles and the way that they can actually support children's learning at home through cognitive development. And so there's a lot of resources available for parents around parenting, but not necessarily around how to actually engage in their learning at school, which is why I wrote my book, Creating Connections, that you can see in the picture there. I became an author a few years ago, wrote this book as a guide for parents to learn how to support their children's learning at home and also how to work with teachers and educators to work as a team. I also run a Creating Connections podcast where I give a voice to school leaders and successful leaders in education to try and share some really good news stories with leaders about what's actually happening in education and how we can support educators, but also parents. And I have a Circle of Support series for parents where I interview specialists to really give some guidance for parents as well. And I have a new series coming up soon that's all about self mastery and mindset, which I'm going to be exploring a bit more with you today. So that's my work in a nutshell, and you'll learn a bit more about me as I move through the presentation tonight. So there are various reasons why you have actually either tuned into the masterclass this evening or why you're watching the replay. So it's possible that you may be concerned about some of the students that you do have in your school who have additional needs, or perhaps children who are really struggling with comprehension or memory and struggling to focus and pay attention, which we know is becoming a really big issue with a lot of children and even adults now as well. So perhaps you're here for that reason, and maybe you're here because you're concerned about children's ability to actually cope in the school environment, and you're noticing that their resilience skills aren't necessarily very strong and they're not really coping with the school environment or different people in the school uh, environment, such as different teachers that are coming in and out, different students in the classroom, and different ways that children with additional needs actually need to navigate all those different environments. So perhaps you're here because you're also concerned about children's behaviours and you've noticed a big change or shift in their behaviours and how your teachers are actually managing those behaviours, particularly those children who do have diverse learning needs. Perhaps you're also seeing that there are a number of families who are really struggling to access specialists, and there are many parents who have put their names on waiting lists with psychologists and OTs and other specialists that perhaps aren't available at this time, and so they're having to wait to get their children diagnosed. And there's a lot of push to get children diagnosed now as well, even if they have learning challenges at school that aren't necessarily diagnosable. So we're seeing different trends that are happening, and perhaps that's why you're here too, because you're seeking new ways to actually support your students and also to support your teachers. So in relation to teachers, it's possible that you're here and you're in the right place if you're concerned that your teachers and support staff who are working with children with additional needs are actually struggling with their well-being. And this is a very real challenge because as an educator myself, working and training children in cognitive development, I've actually come across some challenges myself with the students that I've been working with, particularly around their ability to focus and self-regulate, especially if something becomes difficult. So having the skills to be able to manage that and to manage yourself as a person are really critical skills, and so that it doesn't impact your well-being, because often it can be so draining dealing with challenges, and that can impact your well-being as a person as well. So perhaps you're here because you're concerned about teacher resilience as well and the abilities to cope with the resistance that we are seeing in children's behaviour. And obviously some children at a certain age do tend to push back against boundaries and rules, and they're always testing the boundaries, and that's a normal thing for children to be doing. And we as adults need to be able to provide the guidance that they need and in a calm way and in a managed way, so that they can learn how to not resist so much, but to go with the flow of what is being asked of them. So it's a real challenge, I suppose, when teachers are challenged with their own resilience and really having to look in the mirror at themselves and how they actually manage in those situations. So perhaps you're also concerned about how to support your teachers specifically with children who have additional needs, because I guess since the pandemic, we have seen an increase in children who are presenting with additional needs, learning needs, and there's not necessarily training around how to actually cope and manage yourself as a person and what sort of programs are available to support these children. And it's a difficult thing to find yourself in a situation where you're actually grappling to finances and find the right programs that actually assist your staff. So yeah, once again, quality programs, that access to these, and the ability for teachers to develop children with additional needs capacity for learning. So these are all areas that it's possible that you're interested in exploring tonight, and that's what we're going to be taking you through so that you've got some answers to take away with you and then some things to think about once you've finished this evening. So the three areas that we're really going to touch on are how to empower your staff to work with additional needs children, how do all students learn differently and how you can support them, because we know all students are different and they actually have different ways that they learn, and how can you enable parents as partners in learning, because we know that teachers can't do everything themselves. We need parents to be engaged in the learning of their children so that as a team we can support them to improve. So we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. And of course, please pop the questions in as we go. So first, I want to touch on an area that is really critical piece of the puzzle in how to actually support your staff, because we know that when children are struggling, it impacts your staff, and vice versa. If your teachers are struggling, that impacts students as well. So how can we actually support your staff when this happens, and what are we actually witnessing in our schools? The data and the research is showing that there are huge challenges, with 80% of Australian principals having experienced critical incidents in their schools that they probably didn't see coming, and no doubt were not necessarily prepared with the skills to be able to cope with things like violence and security threats and suicide attempts and different medical emergencies that arise. And as an outsider, I guess, going into schools and working in schools over the past 15 years, I've witnessed a lot of chaos sometimes in schools when all of a sudden there's an emergency and we have to come together and figure out a solution. So really having the skills to be able to do that, and there are so many amazing educators out there who have these skills already, but there are a lot of teachers who don't necessarily have these skills or are challenged by these situations that arise and don't necessarily know how to manage themselves when these things happen. So we are seeing the result of that being that teachers are resigning, and just in Victoria alone in the last 3 years, resignations have more than doubled, which is not a statistic that we want to see in the future. And not only are teachers leaving the profession, but students are also opting out of school, with 43,000 plus students currently being homeschooled, which is a huge number of students for such a small country as ours in Australia. And most of these students are children with additional needs because they're not coping in a school environment and they're having to learn from home, or they're just opting out of school altogether. So we're also witnessing through McCrindle's research that 4 in 5 teachers are feeling burnout, 3 in 4 are overwhelmed and feeling so stressed about the different challenges that they're facing and how much they need to get done in a week, let alone in every day. And 2 in 3 teachers have considered leaving the profession in the last 2 years. So how can we actually keep those teachers in the profession? We don't want to see them leave. They're thinking about leaving, but we really need to focus on what it is that we need to do to support those teachers to be able to keep them in the profession, and exploring what those options are. So those teachers are feeling stressed and overwhelmed because of an overload of admin obligations, particularly now with funding for children who do have additional needs, who have been diagnosed and who are receiving funding. There's additional admin that they need to complete, and they need to observe those students every day. And it's putting enormous pressure on senior leadership as well to meet those obligations. And that's causing a lot of stress and pressure as well. Teachers are actually leveraging the shortage as well and opting for CRT roles rather than full-time roles. So it's been challenging for a lot of schools to be able to find full-time staff. This has a flow-on effect on children, especially those with neurodiverse learning needs who don't cope too well with different teachers in the classroom and different changes that are happening all the time. They tend to operate a little bit more with routine. Not all children, every child is different, but many children, if they have an attachment to one teacher particularly, it's very challenging for them to warm to a new teacher each day or every second day. So this is causing anxiety, and it's also causing anxiety for other children who are neurotypical in the classrooms as well, because if some children are having emotional dysregulation or having some struggles, other children can feel that as well, and that can cause anxiety and behavioural and wellbeing challenges for our children, leading to school refusal, which so it's a bit of a vicious cycle of things that are happening and in our classrooms and in our schools that teachers are dealing with every day and really need to have those skills to be able to manage and cope with all those challenges that are happening. There's also increased pressure from and on parents. So parents are really feeling the pressure of their children who are struggling and not really knowing how to support them and not having the strategies to support them or the support. And if they seek the support from the school and the school is not necessarily working with them in a team as a team, then it can become frustrating. And then, of course, parents can become aggressive or angry, and then take it out on the school and the staff. So once again, a vicious cycle that we really need to explore further what the root causes are and how we can actually improve on those. And often it's a lack of training and support for teachers and parents. Parents are often not aware of what their role is and how to actually support their child and how to build relationships with the teachers, which is what I explore in my book. And teachers are not necessarily trained in how to actually build relationships with parents to be able to manage these pressures and work in a team environment, which is what I explore in my online courses as well. So I'll just take a little bit of a breath because there's a lot going on in our schools, and I've covered some of those things. And of course, you're on the front line, so you know what's happening in your school, and every school is different. Every school has their challenges and their joys and their amazing things that are happening. But it seems as though the foundations are crumbling. And the problem is that we need, as adults, to be the foundation for children. We need to be stable. We need to have that strength and stability for them to feel safe. But we also need to have that in ourselves, and we need to be able to feel stable within to be able to then work with children who are feeling unstable and who really need our support and guidance. So we are seeing so many foundations crumbling in our world. Our world is in such chaos. Children are exposed to this through social media, of course, and through hearing adults talking about the different things that are happening in our world and really feeling unstable and unsteady and uncertain about what's happening and where they fit. There are a lot of children who are living in different environments with different parents who have different parenting styles. Some children are living out of home, some are foster children. And so there's a whole range of different challenges that we're seeing appearing in our school communities because, as we know, most of the learning happens outside school. Learning and influences outside of school make up around 80%, with around 20% in the school environment. But more and more, these children are relying on the school environment to feel safe and steady. And so they are leaning on your staff, particularly those who are working with additional needs children. So if staff are not equipped with the skills to manage the multiple challenges that they face every day, they are going to experience health challenges and well-being challenges, and they might end up leaving. That 66% might decide in the end, this is all too much and I have to leave. So mindset and working on how to manage yourself as a person and really going internal and looking at personal development is one of the ways that we can support your staff to be able to manage those challenges, to not feel overwhelmed, to not feel stressed, and to be able to actually manage when things do go wrong or when they're challenged. What can we do? The research is showing that what we need to explore is our culture. Culture is key. We need to invest in training and development for your staff and explore innovative approaches to flexibility. So, in relation to the three areas that we're exploring tonight, culture is key, is about exploring the actual issues with your staff and staff culture and how you are actually supporting your staff with understanding their challenges and understanding how they need to actually have further support around their own self-awareness, their own self-management, their own relationship building skills with students, but also with parents, and the different areas around human behaviours that they need support with. The second one is investing in coaching, training, and development, and that is specifically investing in coaching, personalized coaching for your staff, as well as cognitive training. So, cognitive certification training is what we're looking at with Sadaf this evening as well, and how we can equip your staff with the specific training to understand how children learn and the cognitive skills that they may be challenged by, and how to actually support them through a full cognitive learning program. And the third one is exploring innovative approaches to flexibility. And that is about engaging parents as your partners and how you are the enablers of engaging parents to work as a team so that we can actually come up with solutions together to support students. And I'll explore that more towards the end of the presentation. But first, I want to touch on some of the areas that I explore in my coaching program with teachers and with my clients. And everything that we're talking about this evening and everything that we're passionate about at Practically Learning and at Emerger SOI is to do with the brain and how we can rewire the brain to actually shift our perspectives and understand how we learn and to improve the process of learning. So when we actually work on the brain skills to nurture neural pathways and neural connections in the brain, we are actually doing, we're creating a pathway for people to actually understand themselves at a deeper level and understand how their brain works, and then to be able to think more clearly, to learn more quickly and effectively, and to feel more confident as a learner as well. So we're looking at how we do that with staff through coaching and the certification training, as well as students and the cognitive development training. So we focus on the brain and human capabilities because when we understand the brain and how it works and how it actually is so powerful, our capabilities increase. So one of the things I talk about with my coaching clients is around perceptions. And at every moment of every day, we're creating perceptions in the mind. And perceptions are linked then with how we respond to different things that are happening both internally and externally. And we have really three ways of responding, and that I call them the three I's: impulsive, instinctive, and intuitive. Now, impulsive is a response that is often associated with children because they're still learning how to come up with solutions to things and how to respond to different things that are happening to them and how to make good choices. So, for example, if a child is playing a game and they lean across the table and they accidentally knock over a glass of water, they haven't actually thought ahead what's going to happen if I lean across this table. I might actually knock over that water. So I'll make a different choice and I'll walk around and pick up whatever I need. So that's an impulsive decision that is unconscious. They haven't actually been conscious of doing that action. It's just been impulsive. Then there's instinctive, which is the brain's way of keeping us safe. And often people get mixed up between instinctive and intuitive. But instinctive is actually a brain function that kicks into gear automatically. It's partially conscious because you can actually feel it happening and witnessing it happen. But if you're reacting instinctively, it's really the brain taking over and protecting you, keeping you safe. Now, intuitive thinking is where we want to be, where that's ultimately where we want to take people, because once you know how to tap into your intuition, it opens up a whole range of possibilities for you as a person to make better choices, to be more creative, to be able to think about how you respond in different situations, and to actually feel safe and trust yourself to be able to listen to your intuitive thoughts, and because that's where all your answers actually are. But until you know that skill, it's very tricky to not to respond and react impulsively and instinctively to different things that are happening around you. So they're just some of the things that we explore in our coaching program to help teachers and our clients understand themselves at a deeper level and really understand what we're actually going to be doing with the brain when we rewire it. So we focus on coaching the individual to master the mind and create mindset shifts for teachers and leaders to thrive and not just survive. So we want our teachers to be thriving, not going home every day feeling like they've just survived another day and they have to come back again tomorrow and try and survive it again. We really need to teach them how to remain calm in the eye of the storm. And that's a really critical skill that all people who are working with children really need, and parents as well. I actually applied a lot of these skills that I learned many years ago in my coaching training to my parenting, and it had a huge impact on my relationship with my children. So really to help your teachers understand how to overcome any challenges in both their professional and their personal lives, to be able to cope with every day. And we know that when we're thriving, we're able to impact other people in such positive ways. And we want our teachers to be able to do that each day. So I'll now hand over to Sadaf to share with you more about why some students struggle and how we can help you to support them through the cognitive development program. So over to you, Sadaf.
So when we talk about a very important aspect, okay, why do some students struggle? Now think from a very cognitive point of view. Now, attention deficits are the reason that students struggle in the classroom and outside classroom because they cannot keep their attention towards that activity, towards their sport event, towards the writing skills, towards the reading skill, or towards to engage and answer or participate in the classroom. The second reason is your memory. We always choose memory as something where we are all talking about learning, remembering facts and figures. But we are not seeing that memory is that important aspect that helps me to stay up in a communication. Memory is that important aspect that helps me to manipulate information in my mind. Suppose I'm doing maths, it's going to actually help me remember those steps, do some mental calculation, and pen down step by step to solve the problem. So when students are not able to engage in a manipulating task, it's leading to struggle with following instructions, and solving day-to-day problems is one of the reasons that their working memory is limited. From a cognitive point of view, we also need to see an important aspect of processing speed. Now, in this era where we are rewiring learning, in this era where we are adapting to the diverse learning needs of students, in an era where we have started all to believe that different brains function in a different ways, cognitive science actually support these students in many different ways. So going back and talking about processing speed, today we see students are slow. Today we see that the students are lethargic. Today we see that the time they are taking to complete a task and the time they are taking to respond to something is just as per their own convenience. So timelines, note-making skills, test-taking challenges are all not happening in the correct way. The brain can be rewired for improving the learning outcomes of the students. So what are the common concerns? Now, I will put a very simple common concern for all of you in a very simple manner, very, very simple manner, okay? Daily, as working individuals, we organize our day, we plan our day, we meet with challenges, we are time bounded with certain tasks and activities, we have to do multitasking at the same point of time. So does a student, for a school going student who needs to keep doing things. Now, what are the common concerns? Whether it's working memory, whether it's your processing speed, or whether it's talking about visual processing and language. Now, what is this visual processing and phonemic awareness? Let me break down this for you. Difficulty understanding spoken or written language is affecting my reading skills and comprehension skills. It's also, in turn, as a student, I'm not able to verbally express. At the same time, when the teacher's trying to explain something at a stretch of 10 to 12 minutes, these students get confused with similar sounding words, similar sounding ideas, and similar processes. And hence, by the end of the day, they don't seem to get what they're studying. And when we talk about visual processing, most of our learning happens through eyes. But what if the eyes, when giving the message to the brain, is not getting well coordinated? Like, for example, finding a location, for example, using navigation and GPS, for example, coordinating with your motor skills for playing a particular sport activity, for example, writing, for example, doing a kind of a laboratory experiment. So when we are talking about these common concerns, they can range from very simple obstacle or a simple task where they cannot do to something really demanding, complex situations too. So let's look at a very example over here, okay? Take a student. Now, this student is struggling with his memory skills. This student is not able to remember minute of things like, get this book. For example, remove your blue color sketch pens, and then he's finding which pen has to be removed. Easily distracted, that kind of a student. But not all students who are distracted have a diagnosis of ADHD. Some students who are distracted may not have the right cognitive skills like working memory, like concept formation, like speed and accuracy, and because of which they struggle. So using cognitive training, we can actually rewire a new learning habit. We can actually stimulate the areas of those areas of the brain that helps him with retention and actual practical real improvement. Because if you pick up in the last decade, any country, any universities are completely talking about that brain plasticity. Research shows that consistent targeted training can rewire the brain. So what is neuroplasticity? Why are we talking so much about neuroplasticity? So when we use the word neuroplasticity, we are actually talking about how we learn, how we can form new ways of learning, and how we can change some of the old habits of learning, because the brain has the ability to change and adapt. So neuroplasticity is basically, in simple sentence, they reorganize itself by forming new neural connection using cognitive exercises. So our whole body is driven by muscles. So does our brain. Using cognitive perceptual exercises, we are just helping the brain to form a new neural connection that helps them with learning, that helps them with adapting to new ways, that helps them to enrich their overall school learning processes. So let us watch a video to understand neuroplasticity.
This is your brain, the control center of your senses, your feelings, and your thoughts. Your thoughts have so much power over your brain. Over time, frequent thoughts create pathways that become well-worn, like a road you drive down often. These pathways become habitual ways of thinking. Each time you think a thought, it strengthens that same pathway, making it easier to think that same thought again and again. That well-worn pathway becomes a habit of the brain. Sometimes this can be pretty hurtful. But the good news is your brain is plastic, and with repeated intention, you can change these pathways. That's called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the process of creating change in your brain to think the way you want to. You will learn how to focus on a different, more helpful thought and start building a new pathway. At first, it will take practice and intention. You will need to reroute your thoughts. Those old hurtful pathways will wither away as your new thought pathway becomes the well-worn road to a better you.
And in order to get the better you, it is very, very important that you understand that it is not only just about creating a new pathway, but it helps many students to overcome their learning challenges. It helps them to learn new skills, form a new habit, and at the same time be more resilient and flexible in how they're approaching themselves towards a topic, towards a project, towards their study methods, towards their structure, and many more. Now, if I talk about students who have dyslexia, now schools are today supporting these children with a lot of reading domain activities or reading support activities. Of course, they're doing a very, very good job. But as a psychologist, as working on cognitive neurosciences, I have a question for everybody. Can that reading support also strengthen the visual processing skills of the children? No, because they are working on the phonetics, they are working on word to be bifurcated, they are helping the students with sound, they are helping with blending approach. But what also is very much required is your abilities of visual processing skills, those skills which are very important for the eyes to team up the letters to make a word, for our eyes to read from left to right, that is directional reading. At the same time, your eyes to read one word at a time and not skip words while reading. At the same time, we also need to correct them on, not changing the beginnings and the endings of the word. So the word felt can become left, and the word saw can become was, and the word man can become wan, because there is a transposition of the word M-A-N to W-A-N, because M is written like this, W is written in an opposite manner. So targeting underlying cognitive processes is the key to unlock their true learning potential, and that's going to support the recovery for the students in a systematic way and make sure that they are succeeding in their domain and capacity. So what exactly is my goal? My goal is very, very simple. I want to leverage the principles of neuroscience, because leveraging the principles of neuroscience is just systematically allowing me to boost and engage children in simple activities, at the same time make sure that they're engaging in challenging activities. Leveraging neuroscience also means using multisensory learning, that is combining visual, sound, movement, everything together. When I'm talking about neuroscience, I'm also talking about making sure that we target them on specific areas using cognition. So, what are neural deficits? Neural deficits are those areas that becomes like a barrier to my learning. Neural deficit is that area that makes sure I'm not consistent with my work. Neurodeficit is that area that is actually delay in my developmental milestones, and because of which today at the age of 8 or 9 years, I have problems with eye-hand coordination. So neural deficits can be due to multiple reasons. Traditional methods do not focus, they just compensate for the problem. But with the advances in the field of neuroscience, we are clearly saying that personalized cognitive training can actively repair and strengthen the connections of the students in ways which helps them, because this repair is the functional plasticity, the brain's ability to shift functions from one way to a healthier way, to a healthier approach. We all know and we all understand that students have different learning needs. And what are those different learning needs? Like, for example, if I talk about the factors, there are a lot of environmental factors that also affects learning. Like 1 in 5 children start school with good health but poor emotional challenges, which means they do not have good coping, they do not have good resilience. So balancing the different learning skills is very, very important, because Students come to school prepared or unprepared to meet with the demands of learning, okay? And we need to make sure the facilitators, the organization, the teachers, they need to make sure that we are in synchronization, working with the students to uplift his skills and to make him also emotionally, socially, and morally ready. With the principles of neurocognitive science, we will strengthen and get their focus back, and we will have better engagements. Now, what do I mean by better engagements? I don't write in my papers, but started to use some of the cognitive exercises after, 6 weeks, you see the child is actually writing now. It's not about the content, it's not about it's correct, but at least that initiation of from not writing to making efforts to write is something what we are looking at. For example, a student who is verbally very, very good, but when it comes to writing, he doesn't want to write. Now what he says, exactly the same thing he can write. So there is a thought consistency. At the same time, we need to make sure that we are living in that era where distractions are all around us. So as Rachel in the starting of the webinar stated that, we are in that social media, we are in that, age of educational landscape changing and growing, and we need the staff to support all of this. So at that point of time, students also have what I say information overload. And in order to handle that information overload, we do need the principles of cognitive science to work with the students to get them aligned and use their skill sets in the most correct way and navigate their challenges in a systematic way. So what is personalized learning? Personalized learning is a learning which will first assess, identify every student's learning strengths and learning limitations. Then it is going to use adaptive teaching strategies, adjust at the student's pace, adjust at the student's need, adjust at the student's requirements of how it should go. Third, we will make sure that there is a specific method where we are constantly keeping a track record of what in person the child is doing, whether he's comprehended or not, and can he now use that comprehension into an application. So our objective of using the principles of cognitive science is not only just about assessing and knowing this is the problem. Our objective is to assess, to identify, and to make sure that we create personalized learning instructions that align with each student's needs, pace, and abilities. Coming to multisensory. Now, multisensory, why are we talking about multisensory? Take a student who has no learning problem, but that student also needs to use multisensory. Now, when I talk about multisensory forms of learning, they are actually required for studying like subjects of maths and science. When I talk about multisensory learning, they engage the brain in multiple ways. So for example, when I'm sitting, if somebody is whispering, my ears gives the message to the brain. But at the same time, I'm concentrating on that audio visual, which my teacher is showing. And from there also I'm giving the brain. But at the same time, I am also performing one experiment where I am moving. Enhancing and understanding all this is very, very important, because when I look at multisensory learning, it has to be seen from engagement levels of the students. Just one way of learning and doing things today is not enough. A blended approach is so important for students so that they can enhance their learning skills and they can start achieving to what they are supposed to achieve. Now, see the important thing over here. Now, cognitive science is become a very vital and an important aspect today for educational interventions. This is not a substitute to education. This is not a replacement to our, different departments we have in school, like a SEN department or special educator department or a counselor department. Cognitive interventions are an additional resource to the existing things which are happening, because research in these areas over the last few decades have clearly stated an ability once learned stays with you forever. It's like, today I don't get up for exercise, but down the line, when I start doing it for 2 months, my brain gives the message to my body to wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning. So when I talk about cognitive sciences, they do play a very, very important role in the way we learn, in the way we understand, and in the way we will manifest our information. So when we talk about the learning graph at Energia Structure of Intellect program, we create a learning graph for the student. See, we all cannot be perfect in everything. Neither we are good in every area. Neither we will learn everything in multiple ways. We as a human differ in our skin, in our texture, in our hair, in our body. So does in our brain. A goal of this program is to help children map a graph, understand your strengths, understand your average abilities, and understand your underdeveloped abilities. Taking this combination, we systematically work on the five cognitive principles: comprehension, ability to grasp the knowledge; memory, which is very important for my auditory visual learning and my ability to keep doing and engaging in the classroom; critical thinking is application of what I know; problem solving is the day-to-day hassle and the day-to-day task to be solved; and creativity is having the bent of mind to be open to new ways of learning and doing things. We are looking at a screen which talks about 90 learning abilities. Yes, a human being has 90 cognitive learning abilities. These abilities are very, very crucial and very, very important. These 90 learning abilities maps the different kind of intellectual skills, and they also will tell us the prerequisite for learning in different areas. What skills I need for mental maths, the same set of skills I do not need for studying a particular map of a particular country. What skills I need to do problem solving, the same skills I do not need when I'm trying to study a literature or read a storybook or a novel and try to do a narrative writing. Go back to your school days and just think, have you always studied the subjects in the same way? No. Have you always practiced the learning in the same way? No. Different subjects definitely requires different set of prerequisite skills. So the first thing what we do is identify whether the student has those prerequisite skills or not. That gives us the second step of creating a report, a way where we understand the learning profile of the students. And that further helps me to navigate towards their learning needs and creating cognitive specific intervention. So what is the future of the education? The future of the education is changing, is evolving. And I think that change and evolving is good, but it's all about how we are integrating principles of cognitive science into the teaching methods, as well as into, which students to enhance their learning efficiency. What today we see, the efficiency of the students are reducing, and what we look at is the teachers being very overwhelmed, concerned, burned out, and we need to be the solution provider for both these people, whether it's the staff, whether it's the students, so that personalized, effective cognitive training will support the students and support the staff at the same point of time. Lately, there have been a lot of researchers, okay? And, I can keep going to almost 100 researchers over here, not exaggerating, but yes, the field of cognitive neuroscience is advancing to a very different level. What we want you to understand, that is the core importance over here, is under the right learning conditions, every single student has the capacity to unlearn an old habit and relearn a new habit. And that cannot be done in a classroom. That cannot be done in a group. That needs to be personalized, catering to that child's need and requirement. If you're unwell, when you go to the doctor is not treating all 15 people in the same way. He will understand your body weight, your height, your other health issues, and based on that, the doctor is going to provide you with certain medications and a period of follow-up as to when you have to come. Take learning as a prescriptive method. Start taking the paradigm shift of traditional classrooms is enough. No, it is not enough. Today, learning is beyond the classroom shift. Learning is anywhere and everywhere. Learning is in a structured environment as well as unstructured environment. And our children need to be ready to use their brain muscles and to navigate the challenging or the unprecedented times. Hence, personalized cognitive learning interventions are very important, very crucial. And when I understand how best the child learns, the first thing what I'm achieving through my program is actually empowering them, helping them to restore their self-confidence and their self-esteem. So let's watch this video which talks about the future of education.
The future of education can't be found in a gadget or an app or a program or a product. It doesn't require a think tank full of pundits. No, the future of education can be found in your classroom. Your classroom is packed with creative potential. You have all the innovation you need right there in your room. You have the power to make it happen. It's what happens when you experiment. It's what happens when you give your students voice and choice. It's what happens when you abandon the scripted curriculum and take your students off-road in their learning. It's what happens when you teach to your students rather than teaching through text. It's what happens when you unleash the creative power of all of your students, when you make the bold decision to let them make things and design things and solve problems that they find relevant. Sometimes it's messy and even confusing. It often looks humble. But understand this, that every time your students get a chance to be authors or filmmakers or scientists or artists or engineers, you are planting the seeds for a future that you could never have imagined on your own. That's the power of innovative teachers. That is why the future of education is you.
And that's so true. With we supporting your staff, we are just asking that how we are going to revolutionize the whole method and draw towards a drive that can help us to meet with the demands of the advancement in technologies, neurosciences, and educational psychology. See, when we are talking about real world applications, we need our students to keep, using automation, keep using multisensory, keep using experimental learning, and keep making sure that they are creating the new you them for themselves by also working on their social emotional learning.
Thank you, Sadaf. And of course, along with cognitive development for children comes the social and emotional learning. And that's where we come to the third piece of the puzzle of what we're exploring tonight. And that is how you can partner with parents to support your teachers and your students. Because we know that every child comes with a family and every child is going home to a family every evening, and they are learning so much from the people in their home. And the future of learning, or what is actually happening now and gradually happening in our schools, is that more and more we're realizing that 5 decades of research around parent engagement is a critical part of a school improvement plan and a school culture to actually engage parents in the process of their children's learning. So the first thing that needs to happen, though, is really shifting perceptions and perspectives on the parent role in their children's education. And often parents are positioned as only focusing on the progress of learning. And this has happened over many years around how we perceive parents as actually just receiving reports, coming for parent-teacher interviews, and monitoring their progress on online portals and those types of tools that are available for parents now. But there are still many schools who are using a very traditional, old-fashioned approach of just involving parents in their children's learning on a very surface level approach. Whereas we want to explore this new approach. It's not new, it's actually 5 decades old. But a lot of schools have taken a while to understand what parent engagement actually is, parent engagement in learning. And that's really about enabling active participation in learning at home and sharing knowledge of the process of learning and how children learn rather than just their progress. Because once parents know how their children learn, they're able to support at home and they're able to be available for their children for accessing resources and teachable moments and exploring the possibilities in their learning beyond the school. But alongside teachers as well. So moving from the traditional approach of parent involvement, which is doing things for the school, but not necessarily for their children or for the students, but looking at ways that we can engage parents in learning at home, because we know now that not all parents can actually be present in the school environment, and it's not possible for all families to be a part of the school community necessarily, even though we want to still encourage that. We also want to encourage them to engage in learning at home. So you as educators are the enablers of the roles of parents as partners, and having an understanding of each of the roles that parents play is really critical. So it comes down to understanding the process of learning, active participation, and then working alongside teachers. So that involves teachers communicating the gaps in their learning. So yes, we receive reports as parents. We see their progress, their learning progress, but we don't necessarily know exactly where they're actually struggling and what cognitive learning gaps they might have. And perhaps teachers don't have access to that information, or perhaps it's not necessarily something that you've ever really shared with parents and had conversations around how can we actually support your child to improve in these cognitive areas, and how can you as their parents support that at home as well. So sharing information about cognitive strengths and areas for improvement is another piece of understanding the process of learning, understanding how their children learn, and also sharing learning expectations. So what are the children expected to learn at school, and what are the parents expected to support them with at home as well? And once again, sharing the progress as well. Active participation means providing activities at home that do develop cognitive learning skills to be able to function more effectively at school, and to educate parents around what those skills actually are, so that they understand when they're playing cards with them, or when they're taking them camping, or when they're involved in sport, their brain is actually being nurtured and they're creating those neural pathways that are so important for learning. Also encouraging parents to attend meetings with teachers and having an awareness as teachers of how to construct those meetings and how to provide that information for parents so that they are feeling part of a team and welcomed in this process. Parents should be able to share their concerns and to be able to have an understanding of the cognitive development program if the children are undertaking this at school, having an awareness of what that involves and how their children are actually improving their cognitive skills. And teachers also need to be aware of helping parents feel safe to share their concerns, but also for parents to understand that teachers should be able to feel safe to provide feedback and suggestions as well. So that leads me to working alongside teachers and helping parents understand how important that is for them to work alongside you and you to work alongside them to share that progress both at home and at school. So both of you have a role to play in sharing information about the student from the home perspective and from the school perspective, and then finding solutions together. So instead of parents coming up with solutions and then bombarding you at school with those solutions, or you coming up with a solution and telling parents what to do, it's about a teamwork approach and working through how can we support this child together. And once again, looking at ways that we can support families as well, with understanding that the things that children do at home do impact what happens at school. And it's not about telling parents about how to set rules around social media, but it's more about explaining the impact that social media is having on them at school, and even getting to bed late and things like that. But in a way that is a partnership approach, not a demanding that parents change the way that they live their lives. So it's about mapping together to improve the learning and opportunities for students. So really working together as a team to do this. So we know, as I mentioned, that there's 5 decades of research that shows that when parents are engaged and supporting their children's learning, we move from negative behaviours and attitudes towards learning and perhaps student cognitive deficits and a lack of creativity and interest in creating or being critical thinkers, self-esteem and confidence, student and teacher relationships and well-being. We want to see that shift to the positive and have students who are willing participants in their learning and who are passionate about learning and understand how they learn and how the brain works and how they can actually improve. And once they realize those strengths, their learning starts to change and starts to shift. And I know, working with some of my students that I'm tutoring, I see so much progress in such a short time, and their confidence grows every time we have a session. And I talk with them about how they have control over their brains and how powerful their brains are, and it really inspires them to do well at school as well. So how can we actually support you with the different programs that we offer? So I mentioned at the start, I took you through a little bit of the process that I go through with my mindset mastery coaching to support your teachers. We have the cognitive certification training for teachers. We also have opportunities for you to partner with parents, where we actually work with the parents and provide a trainer or tutorer to work with the student outside of school. And that's for parents who are able to invest in their child's cognitive development. And then there's the full cognitive intervention program that Sadaf talked about that actually supports the personalised learning of every student. So if we have a look a bit more detail about the mindset mastery coaching and the process from here following the masterclass, this is about mindset mastery that supports your staff with the skills to empower them to work with children with additional needs. And this could be for any staff who actually work with children with additional needs and other students. The process is to connect with us through a meeting, and we'll explore with you the options and the packages that we have around mastery coaching. You then engage in the mindset mastery coaching and inspire yourself and others. So when you take part in this type of coaching, you have the opportunity to master skills in emotional intelligence capabilities, your creativity expands, physical and psychological safety skills are also shared, and you can overcome personal and professional challenges when working with students and their families. So there are challenges around all the different aspects of trying to support children with additional needs, but teachers don't need to suffer anymore. We need to be able to support them and try and keep them in the profession. So you'll notice that Connect, Engage, Inspire is the 3-step process for us to provide support for the adults who surround children. And so each of our processes involves connecting, engaging, and inspiring. So the teacher certification training, once again, you connect with us and we'll explore in further detail what that looks like. And then once your staff engage in certification training, there are group options and individual options to choose from. They are able to inspire students and really watch them grow in their cognition and capacity for learning. The assessment and personalised intervention program is basically the pot of gold, where we run them through the program and we watch as they really flourish in their learning. Connect with us to learn more about this program and the options to have your staff deliver this in-house in the school, or for us to work with parents directly to deliver the program outside of school hours. So that once the students engage in personalised intervention program, they are feeling inspired to learn, and hopefully we have supported them to have a lifelong love for learning. So the school partnership program that we have on offer is about engaging parents as partners in learning, and that's where we engage parents to support the learning at home, the cognitive learning, and we actually connect with them directly. And the process is for you to connect with us as a school, and we'll make a presentation for you and a group of your staff. Your students will then engage in learning ability screeners that we provide for free for all students, or for a specific group of students you feel can benefit from the learning ability screener. And I'll run through more information about that when you connect with us. And of course, we inspire families to support at home. So families really get to know what their children's learning strengths are, how they can support them at home with extra activities and different ways that they can watch them or help them to thrive in the program. And we meet with them regularly to give them feedback as well, and reports, thorough reports about their progress. So these programs are for all students from year 2 to year 9. So we don't necessarily explore early learning at this stage, but it's more for students who are having some challenges with their learning. They don't need to be diagnosed, as Sadaf mentioned. They could be gifted students, they could be neurotypical students, or they may have some other learning challenges. So it's for all students, and every student, as we know, is different and has different learning abilities and learning needs. So that brings me to the end of the masterclass, and I just want to thank Sadaf, my co-presenter for this evening, for her insights and expertise and experience, and sharing that with you tonight. And I just want to mention that for us to connect, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen now. And there's a link in the chat box for you to click on as well, or a link below this video for you to connect with us and make a booking, so that I can make a presentation and learn more about your school community, and we can discuss your needs and find some solutions for you on how to support your staff and empower them to work with children more effectively with additional needs. Thank you for joining us this evening, and enjoy the rest of your evening.